Good morning, everybody. Today is Thursday, April 9th. We're here for a work session. At this time, we'd like to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilwoman Merrifield, would you lead us, please?
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ms. Merrifield. A couple announcements today. Don't forget Saturday and Sunday is the beginning of race track, not street, spring fling at EPCAL. We also have on May 1st, we're celebrating, there we go, that was a great announcement during that, celebrating the 250th of America's birthday at the Suffolk Theater at 8 p.m. with the Great American Bash. Tickets are on sale. And we also have our 2026 flushing water mains. It's beginning April 12th through the 25th. And in the evenings, our water district will be doing that. Does anyone else have any other? Yes, ma'am.
I do. Thank you. On Saturday, April 25th from 9 to 11, we're going to have our town-wide cleanup day from Wading River out to Laurel. So bring your family down to Town Hall, and we will provide you with gloves and trash bags and pickers and safety vests. It's always a great turnout, and I hope that everybody can join us.
Thank you very much.
Yes, I have one too. The senior committee met yesterday, and just to let everyone know that at Peconic Hospital, they are having a National Healthcare Decisions Day, seminars on advanced care and directives, and that's going to be at the Peconic Hospital on next Thursday. That's the 16th at the Caregivers Room from 12 to 2 p.m., giving information and seminars on all those things as health proxies, and it's very useful as individuals get older, caring for other individuals that are older. It's very useful too. I highly recommend it to attend.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilman? Councilman? Good. Okay. All right, so we'll move right into our open session, and today to start off, we have Greg Doroski, who's our Suffolk County Legislator, and Julie Wesnofske, Peconic Land Trust, matters surrounding the possible land preservation opportunity with the Town of Riverhead. If you guys would want to come to the table with us, that would be fantastic. And we've asked Anne Marie, one of our town attorneys, to join us as well.
Did I see you yesterday?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. I need to hear the story now.
Open space. I believe you have handouts for everybody.
Supervisor, as we get started, I'd just like to point out that this was the work of prior legislator Catherine Stark, who has been working for several years with Councilwoman Waske. And I just ask that it should be Councilwoman Waske's name on this first item for the agenda because of all her hard work. We're here today on this project. I just ask that be noted for the record, that it be clear that it was Councilwoman Waske who's come with this project, and also former legislator Catherine Stark, please.
Sure. Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman Merrifield. I appreciate that. I did work with Catherine Stark on this for about 2 years, as well as other preservation that has been happening for discussion within our town, and also as liaison to the Farmland Preservation Committee. I'm surprised that they were not included to be here today on this, and also somebody from Open Space, since part of this is Open Space.
Open Space was contacted.
They were,
Yes,
okay.
yeah,
I'm not the
absolutely.
liaison to them, so I wouldn't know, but.
Yeah. So,
I am, and they didn't even bring it up, so I'm not,
oh, that's,
They did ask.
They did,
Yeah.
yeah. They did, and I gave them my, okay.
yeah, they were
Yeah.
talked about it at a prior meeting, and then they were also contacted yesterday. But yes, I will definitely make sure, and
I just
excited.
want to make sure
So
that
our-
Catherine Stark does receive some credit for
Absolutely.
this, because she was kind of, no disrespect.
Oh, yeah,
to you,
no
but,
disrespect, and this, as you point out, does predate my time on the legislature. Julie reached out to me when I did come into office to kind of bring me up to speed on it. And one of the new things that we kind of talked about, and the reason that we're kind of reapproaching the town to discuss this, is I think there's kind of a unique and exciting opportunity for the town to take maybe a more active role in the preservation of this, with potentially the acquisition of a specific parcel as open space. I'll defer to your town attorney. I do think, just because this is a property acquisition, I think it would be useful to have some general discussion in public session. But if we talk about any specifics about price or anything that gets too in the weeds, we may jump into executive session, if only so we're not working against ourselves in potentially developing more outside interest. So I don't know if
Bring that back around if need be. Yeah.
I completely agree. And any purchase for the preservation would require a public hearing.
Absolutely.
Just for the general public, from a legal standpoint, I always think it's helpful because lots of people ask what the difference between what is open space, what is sterile land, what is development rights being sold. So specifically, as before we begin the conversation, exactly, what you are,
So under the law, it's the resolution that a town board would adopt. And that, whatever the resolution describes, it could be open space kept natural, it could be open space improved for public access. So,
could there be structures on open space property?
correct, but they all should be identified in the resolution because the resolution is the project purpose under Town Law 64E. So, moving forward after purchase, you can undertake those activities that you identified in the original resolution.
Can you amend it in the future? For example, let's say we do a county park and years from now we want to put in bathrooms or something that fix things. Can open space resolution be amended to allow? Or do we need a full site plan before proceeding?
Generally, it can, unless you truly deviate from the original purpose of preservation.
Okay.
If you really go afar, that's really disingenuous to the public who supported it from the get-go.
Got it.
And although I'm not an attorney, I will add, you do run into issues of alienation of parkland, which would require a public referendum. If you do in your resolution, as your town attorney points out, kind of set it up as passive recreation, let's say, and you wanted to add some active elements to it, my understanding is you'd actually need to put that to public referendum because you would be alienating that parkland. And, there is, litigation surrounding that. We actually dealt with some of this in South Old Town on a parcel where, it was acquired and we wanted to do some affordable housing, so this stuff can get messy.
Just say to open the conversation, because sometimes people feel like that's open space, nobody can go on it, nobody can touch it.
Yeah,
It's presented.
or the flip side is that, we're purchasing development rights on farmland, and therefore that's public property and farmers shouldn't be allowed to farm, and, we want to put additional restrictions on it because it's preserved. That's not true.
Yeah.
Development rights purchases strictly take development off of it. You're still allowed to do agriculture. Open space is something different. That's kind of the more traditional public access to parkland. And the town does have a park on Sound Avenue that's kind of right in the middle of this, which I think kind of brings us to the idea that we wanted to pitch to you all and request that you would consider getting an appraisal for the purchase of this parcel. So I don't know if Julie wants to discuss this a
Can I
little.
ask a question? I have a question, Anne Marie. So, and yeah, we do have a parcel here, and that's
I'm gonna pass
open
these down.
space.
These are the two parcels adjacent
Yeah.
that we have.
So my question is this: could it be used for camping, for example?
Well,
You said it's recreation. Can it be used for camping, or
so I think you could preserve it and describe camping as passive recreation use, do very limited improvements. I think you could.
That's important. And who would run? Can our rec department run that?
Of course.
Oh, good. Okay, so all right. Good to know.
Well, I think Julie's going to explain what section that we would look at, and do you
Okay.
want to go ahead and describe all this to him?
Sure, so I'll just give you a very brief background. So the first map is just sort of to put the property in context. as a target for preservation. You can see, right, the blue, the Sound Avenue preserve that the town owns. On the west side is the Land Trust, McQuaid Preserve, and county holds an open space easement on that. There's some additional protected farmland on the east side. Across the street is the Cornell Research Farm and additional protected farmland. And if you look at this from, the Sound south, it's a block of almost 1,000 acres of preserved land with this big piece sitting, in the middle of it, still not preserved. It has a lot of ecological preservation values, excuse me. Working farmlands down along Sound Avenue, and it's got, endangered species and forest and sound frontage and whatnot. So that's just a brief glance of the.
So it's really a unique opportunity for the town. If you go to the last page, I think it's the areas in pink that are recommended that the town consider for preservation. It's really unique because if you go up to the existing Sound Avenue Preserve, this will complement the existing walking trails, and it goes from grasslands to meadow. Tons of birds are in here, and you would provide the public a potential unique opportunity also to have access to the sound.
And essentially what you would be doing is preserving, adding to your additional parcel that you have preserved and working all the way to the sound. I see this as a really, almost a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the town of Riverhead to acquire a sound front parcel with access to the beach. There is a usable building on the bluff there. I can think of South Old Town. We have Downs Preserve with the buildings there that are used for programming, and there's public access to them. South Old Town is in contract with Group for the East End to run programming there. So you could either partner with a nonprofit or have your rec department run it. But this really is a unique opportunity, and what it would be is kind of partnering with the county to purchase development rights for agricultural parcels up front. The Peconic Land Trust would hold,
So the way this is playing out is Nassau County is going to sell this parcel no matter what. They're tired of dealing with it. It's too confusing. They're going to sell it.
It's in Suffolk.
Exactly. So they have given the land trust first crack at trying to come up with some way to purchase the property from them. And our goal here being to preserve as much of it as possible and keep the existing camp there to be able to continue running. If it doesn't work out, they will sell the property. So we are hopefully on the road to going into contract with Nassau County to purchase the property. And the way that we're being able to fund that acquisition is we're going to have to do private fundraising, but bringing in our partners. So Suffolk County, as Greg said, they've made an offer to purchase the development rights on the farmland. We've had lots of discussions with New York State Parks, New York State DEC, talked about a lot of options. At the end of the day, they directed us to the Bond Act and the Open Space Grant. So the green is what Suffolk County is working on. The uncolored area is what we're dealing with the state on. And then the pink would be potentially the town of Riverhead being able to come to the table with us. So it would not only be preserving that specific portion of the property, but it would enable us to preserve any of it. If we can't, come up with enough money from our public partners and fundraising, we'll lose this. It's literally a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
And as you all rightly point out, my predecessor, Legislator Stark, and Councilwoman Wesnofske have been working on this for 2 years. It's now the ball's in our court to bring this across the finish line, not to kind of mix metaphors there. and time is running out. You know, there is, as Julie points out, some urgency for Nassau County to sell it. We do have a willing partner in Suffolk County to take the development rights. Peconic Land Trust is kind of running point on the overall acquisition, and it's going to deal with the other parcel. But to make this happen, we really need to bring in Riverhead Town. So this could be a mutually beneficial relationship, both for the people of Riverhead Town to get public access to the sound here and really have this as kind of a centerpiece of open space for Riverhead Town, but it does facilitate the overall preservation. You know, if Riverhead Town does not come in here, it's going to become really difficult to preserve this overall, 140 acres. So, you know, I don't know if we want to potentially quickly go into executive session to talk about, you know, price tags that have been discussed and what that would do, but it would be my request that the town board could authorize an appraisal of this purple section ASAP. I don't know if you can do that in your work sessions or you'd need to schedule a special meeting, but there is urgency here.
Who's going to pay for the appraisal?
Riverhead Town. Because you would be the person who's acquiring this, and it would be a simple appraisal. We're not talking about a survey.
Yeah, I just want to be very, clear for me. This, I mean, and I said this earlier, if there's first of all, this is worth a lot in tax revenue to the town, this particular parcel. Having said that, if there's a way that we can utilize this, like with our rec department, as a campground or something like that to derive revenue, that's, tipping the scale a little bit for me, because this is a very extremely valuable piece of land.
Yep.
And I want to make sure that that Riverhead can benefit from any moves that we make financially.
Yeah. So, not to impose my own view here, but I will.
Please do.
There is the building that exists on the bluff, which I think you're absolutely right. You do need to figure out sources of revenue and also use. Stewardship of open space is expensive. My fear, though, is that if you look at trying to turn this into an active campground or some sort of revenue generator for the town, you're adding complexity that is going to kill this opportunity. And I think there are other parcels that may be more appropriate for this sort of activity in Riverhead Town. And the risk of development of this overall parcel is really paramount to me. And even though there is potential tax revenue here, the cost of that development, both in a sensitive Soundfront Bluff area, but also in a historic agricultural corridor, really outweighs that. And this is really one of these things where the Community Preservation Fund, which it's my understanding that Riverhead Town does have some funds there, was set up explicitly to facilitate these sort of purchases. And ultimately, the town board is going to need to decide, is foregoing this tax revenue worth the the In my eyes, it is, but it's ultimately up to you.
I'm not saying it's not.
What are the property taxes? Do we know that? What are?
To be clear, you're not going to lose tax revenue with this transaction, or not very much. It gets a nonprofit exemption. I don't know, $1,500 a year.
Yeah.
Can I circle back to what you said about, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So just because I know exactly what Bob's concerned about, we're proud of our land preservation, but every time we take something off the tax rolls, it means the other residents got to pick it up.
Yep.
So we just want to be clear from the front. They already have a nonprofit, so it's an estimated $1,500 a year. So we're talking about a very minimal number.
Yeah.
Okay, it's not, the residents aren't making up a $30,000 tax payment.
So, now with that, I need to understand when you use the word complexities to camping. If people are glamping there, I mean, there's no structures, they're bringing their tent or whatever it is. Where's the complexity there, so I get an understanding?
Councilman,
Yeah.
truly, that's the decision of the 5 members of this board. So your decision
I'm
for
asking a
the
question as a
legislator.
board member, I'm
Correct,
not making a
correct.
decision.
I know. So, but the decision 1 is whether or not you would authorize an appraisal. Decision 2, most significant, is only for the 5 members of this board. And that's what is the purpose of preservation and what is the intended use of the property. It's only for you 5. That's it. You decide that.
I would like to recommend that we move forward with an appraisal immediately. I think that this is excellent for the town of Riverhead. Any preservation that we can do, I am fully supportive of. You hit the nail on the head with everything that you just said, about this property and, the once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. That's exactly what this is, and we are foolish if we do not pay direct attention to this.
I agree 1,000%, and I think we can do
move
executive.
forward with the I would like to move
executive
forward with the
session
appraisal.
Next week and have you back in.
So if it's all right with the town board, I can prepare a resolution as a ratify, obtain your signatures beforehand, and order the appraisal now.
I'm amenable to that.
I know, absolutely agree. Thank you, Councilman Wesnofske, for pushing this forward. Thank you.
Yeah, you may have just created a great campground for us.
What is with the campground? I have not understood.
Thank you all for coming in. Really appreciate you guys. We'll put you on for executive to talk numbers next week, and so
Thank
have
you.
you back.
And I thank you very much.
Yeah, no,
for-
thank you
I
for,
spoke with you in
yeah,
December
no,
and said,
absolutely.
please don't forget about Riverhead.
Yep.
And you held to your word on that, and I thank you.
Well, it was Christmas time, I couldn't.
We had to get off on the right
But no,
foot.
thank you for doing all the work over the years on this. This opportunity wouldn't be here, but for your and former legislator Stark's work.
Absolutely.
So, thank you. Yep.
Thank you.
Our next, yeah, good job, Jillian. This is awesome. Matters surrounding change of business zone F, zoning use district with
Thank you.
Mr. Bergman.
I'll let Justin get back in the booth because we do have representatives from Tanger here joining us on Zoom.
You got some more up in the back. You want to bring them up?
They're not from Tanger. No, Tanger's going to be on Zoom. So we're going to bring them up.
Posted on the website, is there anything different?
I'll give them to you.
Oh, Julie was supposed to give her a copy. She didn't. There.
It's on the website, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I have.
Yeah, this is what's on the website. Is it? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I have it. Do you need?
No, it's online. I downloaded it. Yeah. No, this has got to fix this.
Wonderful Life reference?
Yes.
All right, I got it.
Good.
It's classic.
Morning.
See, Greg, everybody.
Have a wonderful life.
You want to
I'm very
introduce?
excited that this is on for today.
Yes.
Yeah, this is.
If we could, before we get started, Jordan, Brett, if you guys could just unmute and just introduce yourselves to the board, and then I'll lead into the conversation.
Good morning. Thank you for having us. My name's Jordan Horn. I'm the Vice President of Development with Tanger.
Hi everyone, thanks for having us. Brett Brophy, Director of Development with Tanger, and we also have Denitra on as well, who can introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Denitra Hartzog-Mitchell, and I am Vice President, Associate Counsel at Tanger, so part of the legal department.
All right, thank you. So I'll introduce this topic and give you a little backstory on the discussions we've had with Tanger. So what we've got before the board today is pretty much a wholesale revisit of the Business F zoning use district, the Manufacturers Outlet Center Overlay Zone. As the board's aware, the Business F zoning district was adopted in 1992. Tanger came into town. At that time, the town worked with Tanger to develop the Business F zoning code, which was, a manufacturer's outlet center. There's been several changes and, minor amendments to the zoning code since then. In 2001, the town board added a permitted use for indoor theater. Then in 2024, we did some, I'll say, like moderate changes to the zoning district, which were done in conjunction with Tanger. That opened up a couple of more permitted uses, really, really specific types of uses, like specialty food stores. Like if you read the existing code, it's very, very detailed and very specific, almost to the point where it restricts potential tenants and users from coming into the site. So Dawn and I have had several meetings back and forth with Tanger. I do have a slide deck that they've provided us that'll support some of these changes. The long and short of it is the business model for Tanger has changed. This was something that was recommended and discussed in the comp plan on pages 197 and 198. Generally speaks about the change in the retail market, the need to adapt and provide more flexibility in the zoning. It did recommend working with the developers and working with the landowners to sort of effectuate these changes. So through the discussions that Dawn and I have had with Tanger, they provided us. Justin, is it possible to bring up that slide deck that I provided to you? And I'll ask Jordan and Brett if they can just discuss this a little more. So the long and short of it is, in 2019, Tanger provided an analysis. I guess these are sales per square foot for their properties. Their properties are divided into different tiers based on sales performance. In 2019, you can see that on the left side of that chart, Deer Park and Riverhead were both considered Tier 1, which are their top performing stores. And now as we fast forward to 2025, Riverhead has dropped off to a Tier 4 store. So the sales per square foot have dropped. And Jordan, I don't know if you want to jump in and sort of explain this a little more and just sort of the impacts that you guys are feeling in just your general business model.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I mean, I think from the business standpoint of the outlet type users, that has shrunk over the years, and you can definitely see that impact across our portfolio. There are less retailers that are in the strictly outlet business. And, comparing Deer Park, that most of you are hopefully familiar with, to Riverhead, what we've seen with that difference of zoning is that our tenant mix has evolved there between 2019 and 24, specifically on these charts, and has continued to bring in new tenants and met the demands of the consumer. And with Riverhead, with some of the restrictions that we do have, we've unfortunately not been able to do that. And we've lost some of our existing outlet tenants and have seen a vacancy rate continue to creep up, which has then translated to a difference of our sales per square foot and shifting Riverhead from that Tier 1 market down to a Tier 3. So, what we've worked with, and Greg and Don have been wonderful to work with, is looking at Deer Park and some of our other similar properties and how those have continued to succeed and grow and thrived in the environment that we're in, and how we can bring Riverhead to those type of results and grow that business back and bringing it back towards that Tier 1 property.
So keeping that in mind, we did look at some of the conversations were basically, is Deer Park working for Tanger? They said yes, and I said, I'm like, all right, so let's kind of take the Town of Babylon's code that they have for their Tanger property and sort of adapt that and model a code after that. So instead of creating these really specific picayune types of uses where you've got like 2 paragraphs worth of you can have this much square footage for this product, this type of square footage for this product, I wanted to sort of make it a little more generic and let these types of tenants, as long as they fit in with these types of uses, let Tanger attract the types of tenants that they need to make their properties succeed. So going through just some of the the code, I'm going to strike the manufacturer's outlet center overlay zone just because I feel like that's again an antiquated thing from almost 35 years ago when this was adopted. Making some amendments. Right now the code requires a single-story campus except for such uses exempt for single stories. We have a maximum height requirement in the Business F zoning district, so if they wanted to come in with a two-story structure that met the height requirements for the zoning district, I don't necessarily see the need to restrict it to one story. It still needs to be designed in a cohesive campus fashion, so you'll have, aesthetics and architectural elements that will really sort of make a cohesive campus rather than just sort of, spot development, buildings of a different style. Again, removing manufacturer's outlet, retail center, interior design and showroom center, the specialty grocery, food store, and market centers. Going to replace them with a lot more generic uses. One of the shops and stores for the sale of retail and consumer merchandise and services. At its nature, retail is retail. If a national supermarket tenant wanted to go in there, I don't want to get into how many square feet they can devote to hot food, etc. If any other type of retailer, large scale, wants to go in there, they shouldn't be really bound by some of these other restrictions.
I keep hoping for Uncle Giuseppe's.
I'm a fan.
Hope you hear that, Tanger.
Personal services such as barbershops, beauty parlors, similar services. Again, personal services are defined in our code. Banks, movie theaters, indoor recreation, which shall not include motorcycle or ATV courses, raceways, or gun firing ranges. I know Tanger in their Deer Park outlet, I believe they recently brought a tenant called Main Event there, which, Jordan, if I'm not mistaken, Main Event is similar to like a Dave & Buster's type concept.
Yes, actually under the same ownership. They merged not too long ago, so very similar.
So just pause for 1 second. If something such as Bass Outlet wants to come in, right, then they can sell firearms, fishing equipment, all the things that they usually do. You're just saying not a firing range.
Not a firing range.
So just to clarify, just because.
Yeah, I mean, if they're selling retail, retail is retail, but yeah, no firing range, no shooting range. It's not necessarily appropriate for the, a retail outlet center. Restaurants with or without drive-through windows. Right now, the code essentially allows one restaurant per campus, which, when you look at, Tanger 1, which I believe is in the neighborhood of like 225,000 square feet, to limit them to one restaurant or food court seems a little bit arbitrary. So, if they get a type of use in there, Main Event, that we've had discussions with them with other tenants that unfortunately, because of the way the code was written, they couldn't materialize. So allow restaurants with or without drive-through windows, not putting a limit on the number of them, just because, again, I think that's counterproductive. Commercial video game centers, again, that was put in there just to sort of cover the bases for a Dave & Buster's type use, or in the event that arcades come back. Great. And then Tanger had indicated that there was demand for professional office as well.
I've saved my Atari.
Yeah. All right. I then further in some of the accessory uses, we removed indoor recreation areas because that will now be a principal permitted use. Food courts, because again, that's addressed by the restaurants. Transportation centers and theater indoor. That referenced it in end caps. If they wanted to come in and develop a standalone movie theater in this day and age, again, they shouldn't be dictated to being on the end of a building.
Right, I have one, just with that, if I was doing a movie, if I was having them go up 2 stories, and there was a cafe over here in the middle, right? And there was something over here, I may want to put my movie theater right there, not on an end cap. I don't want to restrict them in any way possible, because you're doing an amazing job here with this code for Tanger, which puts them into the future. In
So
terms of.
the way the proposed code is written does not limit them.
Okay, great, thank you.
It removed that restriction from the end cap development.
I'm going to date myself here a little bit, but I do remember 35 years ago when Tanger was being built, and there was actually a method behind the madness of all the restrictions, and it was so that this did not have a negative impact on Main Street. Something like the theater, there was hopes that the Suffolk Theater was going to be restored and made back into a movie theater at the time, so they didn't want that competition there. The restaurants, Sweezy's, this was all done so that Tanger could just bring in their outlet stores, and the demise of Main Street ended up being 58, not Tanger at all. So I think it's so important that we are removing these restrictions and, giving them the go-ahead that they have out in Deer Park and other places throughout the country to, help them thrive in a time where everybody's not going to the stores like they used to. So you're doing a great job on this.
I appreciate that.
Thank
And
Sometimes people might say, just to lead off of what Councilor Doroski is saying, is that people say, why is the town, suddenly changing restrictions, reducing things over? Tanger presumably is one of the highest paid property tax entities in the town of Riverhead, and it's important for every resident to understand the need for them to prosper and survive, so they continue to make those yearly tax payments. And a loss of revenue like that would be devastating to the town as a whole. If Tanger didn't survive for any reason, we all have to pick up the tab. So it's important for the residents to understand when we make adjustments like this, it is, yes, it's for the success of them, but in the end, as a large tax payer, their success takes the tax burden off of each and every one of us. So people just need to understand why we do things like this to make sure that they're successful.
Yeah, and just to kind of tag on to a couple of these concepts, anyone who's visited Tanger 1, when you drive through Tanger 1, I mean, no disrespect to Jordan or Brett, Tanger 1 right now is just not happening. You've got a lot of vacancies, there's just a lot of empty storefronts, it's not what it was 20 years ago. Obviously, the retail market's changed, and we acknowledge that. And to Councilwoman Waski's point, even when I started here 10 years ago, the vacancy problem on 58, I would say, was much more legitimate. There were a lot of larger scale vacancies. When we fast forward now to 2026, a lot of those empty stores have been refilled. There are still a couple of vacancies here and there, but by and large, 58 is doing pretty well. So I don't necessarily see it as, now, 35 years ago when it was adopted, the thought was, Tanger versus Main Street. Now, if the idea was Tanger versus 58, again, 58 seems to be doing very well. So just to kind of go through a few of the more changes, the changes. So we are not amending any of the dimensional regulations. We're not allowing for increased floor area. We're not allowing, any real. We're really talking about change of uses. We're not talking about wholesale change to the zoning district or the dimensional regulations. So, in the event Tanger wanted to redevelop Tanger 1, they're still allowed, whatever floor area they're allowed under the current code, they're still permitted to develop that amount of square footage. So there's not really a significant, environmental review. Again, we're talking about potential redevelopment of an existing large-scale commercial shopping center. We're not talking about, development of a wooded parcel of 40 or 50 or 60 acres. So there's just some language in there. Right now, the zoning code requires parking at a rate of 1 per 200 square feet. We're amending that to 1 per 250 square feet, which is commensurate with our requirement for the current retail parking rate. Again, we constantly talk about seas of asphalt and really underutilized parking areas. So reducing that parking need, again, allow for a little more flexibility in the development.
Something with landscaping too.
Correct, yeah. So I made an amendment that requires a substantially contiguous landscaped area, a minimum of 25% of the total site area. And then I am just making some modifications to the prohibited uses. Now, I will note for the board's knowledge, the way our code is currently written, having a section in a zoning district calling out prohibited uses, I think is just done to the intent to really bring that to the forefront. Right now, the way our code's written, if something is not a permitted use in our code, it's considered a prohibited use. So the section on prohibited uses is a little bit redundant, but it's there just to sort of make sure and bring it to the forefront for any potential developer when they read through our zoning code that it's, kind of explicitly clear. So I'm just taking out a couple of those items, drive-through service, because we now are considering restaurants with drive-through, medical and professional offices, because those, again, are a permitted use, and then personal care services, because, again, we're bringing those into the permitted uses. So that is those are the proposed amendments to the Business F zoning district in a nutshell. Again, we've worked in close concert with Tanger. They've reviewed this. They're happy with the proposed changes. So if the board's amenable, I can get this out to the planning commission. I can schedule, produce any resolutions needed to schedule public hearings, and we can get going on this.
Yes,
Yes.
great.
For me,
It's really
Good job, Greg.
smart zoning.
Consistent with the planning department's push to make the zoning more simple and understandable. we had zoning categories in the past, like antique store. Well, antique store is retail. What's the difference between an antique store and a candy store? Really not a difference, dry retail to dry retail. So this is consistent with that and similar to what planning recommended for the Calverton industrial and the light industrial zoning districts.
Dawn, I'm glad you brought that up, because the other day you said to me, you talked about zoning, and there was you used a specific phrase you used, like wet and dry, like we get permitted, prohibited, and this is antiquated, habitual stuff that's been passed down for a very, very long time. And this, what we're doing here, is really opening the door for people so that they can attract a lot more uses.
Bring on the Bass Pro outlets and the M&M stores.
I want a Trader Joe's.
Yeah. And Councilman Kern, to your point, if a cobbler wanted to go into Tanger, that would be permitted under personal service. We need more cobblers. Yes, we had a healthy discussion about cobblers. So hopefully that will come back.
Thank you both for coming up, and this is great. I look forward to it. So, our next item will not take long. It is just an update on the members of the board of Long Island Science Center who were just here the other day. We'd like to have you come up to the desk just to give us a very brief update of if you've had any movement since Tuesday.
So before you begin, Supervisor, I just have to make a statement that
Sure.
we, as a town board, took an action at the last town board meeting, and we went to hire outside counsel. And so we are currently represented by outside counsel. I imagine the Long Island Science Center at this point should also be represented by outside counsel. So to engage in a conversation, I would ask our town attorney to come forward in terms of recommendations, but I don't believe that it's appropriate for us to be engaging now without counsel present. And did you notify our council about this today?
They've known that they're going to be on the work session, and we've not actually hired outside counsel. We made a motion to hire outside counsel.
So you're being disingenuous against the board as a whole?
I'm sorry, I'd like to correct that. We actually do have outside counsel.
So we re-engaged them?
Well, we previously hired them back in 2025.
Okay.
And there was a public hearing scheduled on the condemnation. And on the day of the public hearing, the town board elected to cancel it and defer it, or suspend further action on the condemnation, pending further work to be done by Long Island Science Center.
Okay.
So the resolution that we adopted on Tuesday is really just designed to lift the suspension on that process and clarify and affirm that we are permitted to, my office is permitted to move forward with the condemnation.
And we have now outside counsel, and they have representation, so I don't think it's, let me speak, I don't think it's proper for you to be engaging in conversation without the presence of counsel on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, I would just counsel the board not to, I mean, you can certainly listen if the Science Center is desirous of making representations as to progress or things that they're doing in order to move forward or whatever. The town board is certainly has the ability to listen to that. The level of engagement may require us to stop at a certain point.
Absolutely.
But I can make that assessment.
Well, I'd like to just add that I feel that the majority has spoken on this point. The town board is consisted of 5 people with equal voting rights, and 3 out of 5, a majority voted to end discussions with the Science Center and move forward with condemnation proceedings. And honestly, Supervisor, by bringing them forward here, creates a false impression to the public. 1, that our vote either didn't happen or it doesn't count, or that you as supervisor could disregard that vote, or 3, that you have some sort of special veto power over our vote, which none of those 3 conditions exist. And frankly, it creates an impression to the public, that a false impression that this still has a path forward, which it does not. And frankly, the legal term for this is moot. It's pointless for them to be here discussing this at this point, considering we have already made it a vote to go forward in a different direction. And it's honestly a waste of time and may even be improper legally for any further discussion to happen between the 2 parties.
Well, with that in mind, I guess we want to thank you both for being representative of being here, and I will discuss with our council and make sure our outside council is here and ask you to have yours. appreciate you being willing to come forward and at least step forward for that, and so we'll move forward. Thanks for coming today.
I have one question to you, Eric. So you're saying that they should not even attempt to continue to move forward?
So the town board has taken an action by town board majority that has set a course that the next step in that course will be scheduling a public hearing as to whether the property should be acquired by eminent domain for a municipal purpose. The Science Center is still in possession of the property. They are entirely at liberty to do what they want with the property.
You answered my question. Thank you.
They're in possession.
Thank you. You answered the question.
Thank you very much for having us.
I'd just like to put on the record as well, that I just want to put further on the record as well, that we have it set for April 21st for a resolution for public and post for the public hearing with going forward on the condemnation proceeding.
Yes, my office did prepare that,
Thank you.
or is in the process of preparing that.
Just want to make it clarity there. So April 21st is the public hearing, is that correct?
No.
What's
It's a
April
resolution
21st?
for the public.
There's been a request that a resolution be submitted for the next town board meeting, which would schedule a public hearing as to whether the town should proceed with eminent domain for a municipal purpose.
So it's being expedited. That's good.
So, all right, well, appreciate you both, and have a great day.
Thank you very much. I want to start off by saying, and I'm going to let speak, or am I
No,
being...
I think you guys should probably just excuse yourselves, and appreciate you guys being here today, so without that.
Well, I'd like to ask the attorney, are they allowed to speak?
I mean, that's subject to the town board's discretion. It's, it's a town board work
I
session.
don't believe they should, under the situation as Mr. Rothwell has.
Then maybe I'll speak under contest, and you could disregard, but I will speak on behalf of the Long Island Science Center. It's very clear, and I've been very impressed with this board. Thank you all very much for your attention to this project. It's very clear that you care about this town and the local businesses and the local residents. And I've received tremendous feedback from this town and the local businesses and local residents from the attention this project has been getting. We've been reached out to by multiple local business owners, and just to cure a few of the items that you guys have raised as concerns, one of the local business owners and Riverhead town resident is donating any mold remediation if it does exist in the building. They're donating their entire labor and materials, and I just heard from another business owner, and he's going to donate all of the dumpsters that could be required if there is mold present in the building. So your residents are listening, your business owners are listening, and they do want this project to go forward, and they want to help the Long Island Science Center. I was prepared today to discuss the phasing of this project, and I see your hand, but in an activation phase of showing how we are aligned in this project and the schedule, and how we can work with the town. But this does require town feedback. If you would not like to meet with me, then my next meeting will be with your building department and your fire marshal to continue the positive progress of this project. And that is essential because we need positive progress. I think this project is accomplishable. Again, I've said many times, we do have the financial capacity. We do have the financial deck in place. We do have the team in place. We need the town's buy-in and the town's support, which is the only thing in our way at this time, and we are grateful for the town's support on this project.
I'm going to ask you again to go ahead and excuse yourself.
Okay.
Thank you guys.
Supervisor, this is putting our employees in a very hard situation. Because if you're going forward to go and speak with the building department or the planning department, they know that there are 3 votes on this board, that this has already gone through. They should not be working.
Your town council has already responded that we're well within our right to do so.
All right.
Thank you very much.
I think we should
And honestly, I value what you're saying, so thank you, because I value my time, I value your
And I
time.
apologize to both of you and to Ms. Kepner that came in today, because I think that you were given a little bit of a sliver of hope that our decision was going to be reversed, and that's not the case. I think that we were very clear the other day and explained our reasoning why we are not supportive of the Science Center being at 111 East Main Street. We support the Science Center. Find another place. Go open up your place in Tanger that's closed today. It's just, it's not happening at 111.
The sliver of hope that we have is from the residents and the town business owners who are donating their services to this project, and I'm very grateful for them and very excited for this project to go forward. Thank you very much for your time.
Our next matter is matters surrounding a code change regarding impervious surface with Councilman Kern and Councilman Rothwell.
And Greg,
Greg Bergman, please.
way to go. Did such a good job on the tenure code, he took the rest of the day off.
I kind of feel like my vote didn't count the other day. I don't know why I
No, you
Where's
your
my
vote
timer?
counted for eminent
Voting
domain.
on it,
So just to clarify, under the existing town board rules, the town supervisor sets the agenda for the meetings. This means that the town supervisor can add items to the agenda. The town board has the ability to, by request of by 3 or more town board members, can add items to the agenda that the supervisor hasn't added. The way our rules are currently drafted, it is silent as to the mechanism by which something is removed from the agenda.
And our counsel should have been present if we are in active litigation.
We're not quite in active litigation yet. There's several steps that the town board has to take prior to the time that we would file an application with the court for a vesting order.
which is what I said earlier. We're not actively in litigation just yet, so.
We are, we've hired a firm.
We're certainly
Their advice, and their advice should be received.
posture.
Yes, we are.
We're in the posture. So, Mr. Berg.
Inappropriate what we did. Good morning, sir. How are you?
How's everybody?
Very good.
It was not inappropriate, if I could stop you for a second, because it was on the agenda, and I did speak to Eric about it, and so he was aware that this was happening, everyone here was aware, and so to call it inappropriate, it may not be something that you liked, but they were on. In fact, at the last board meeting, I said that I had invited them back to work session and they would be here, and so legally, we were allowed to do it, and that's where that's at, so understand it. Okay?
Honestly, we don't have the ability to take it off the agenda. It's the supervisor that sets the agenda.
So,
We did not want it on the agenda.
understand. So, hello there. Hello again.
All right.
Hi, Greg.
So, long matters, impervious surface areas.
Correct.
So this has been going on for quite some time and been back and forth with Business Advisory Committee. Both of you have gone to the committee and met with them, so we appreciate you taking your time out to meet with them to address any of their concerns. So I think that just looking at the overall surface area, I think we keep narrowing the scope down to a few things, and we made sure that we were staying away from our, the agricultural deemed areas, but I'll let you kind of explain a little bit where we're headed today and what the potential changes may be, or what the process is.
All right, so just for a little back history for the board, this is in furtherance of a recommendation that came out of the Business Advisory Committee, I believe it was last year. The Business Advisory Committee put together a analysis of zoning, the zoning codes, looking at impervious surface coverage. They put forth a set of proposed amendments to the impervious surface code for several zoning use districts. There was follow-up with the old supervisor that, the business advisory several times was sort of wondering what's happening with this code. They made inaccurate representations that the town was somehow missing out on revenue or fees because this code had not been adopted. That's just not accurate. This proposed, the proposed amendments to the impervious surface coverage dimensional regulations has changed several times, so the reason I signed the document was just to sort of make sure that if this comes to work session, this is the document that I had looked at and discussed with Councilman Kern and Rothwell. Look,
Because it's been changed about
because it
40
has been
times.
changed several times, so I didn't want to come to, I didn't want to come to a work session and be discussing something that I haven't seen before, so. Look, the long and short of it is, there are recommended revisions to the impervious surface coverage permissible in DC3, bringing it from 80% to 90%. The commercial residential campus, bringing it from 60% to 75%. Business PB, bringing it from 80 to 90. And then Peconic River Community, bringing it from 40 to 50. I will say this code revision did not come from the planning department. This was from the business advisory. I don't really have I'm not going to champion for it. I'm not going to thwart it. It's the board's decision if you wish to go forward with this code. However, I would just caution the board that, when you have a zoning district that permits 80% impervious lot coverage, if an applicant comes forward with a site plan application to develop that property and they need a variance, so let's say they're proposing 85% impervious surface coverage, the administrative relief that's available to that applicant is to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals. They make an application to the zoning board, they consider factors relevant to the area variance, and then the Zoning Board of Appeals makes a determination as to whether or not they've met the criteria to either grant or deny that variance. When you start getting up to sites, getting up to 90% lot coverage. Now, business PB is the Roanoke Avenue business corridor. To my knowledge, I could probably do an analysis of a lot of the commercial sites along that corridor. When you start getting up to 90%, you now run the possibility of someone coming in and saying, well, I have an application that proposes 95% impervious coverage. So, you're sort of creeping up towards that level, these very high lot coverages. Again, the only thing that's going to change is your aesthetics will sort of be reduced. You'll have less landscaped areas. I looked to the 58 corridor, where for many years, the aesthetics of the corridor sort of went by the wayside. That's why we're left with a lot of sites that just have really poor landscaping buffers. Some of them have virtually no landscaping buffers. So if the board wants to move forward with adopting this code, I can prepare any necessary resolutions to enact that legislation. I just want the board to be aware of what you're looking at, and you really will just see reduced aesthetics, reduced landscaping buffers along these commercial corridors.
Increased FAR?
Not necessarily. The potential. There's always the potential for more FAR. Again, I'm not necessarily sure that that's going to.
Explain the difference, though. Why?
Yeah. So you will allow for maybe a slight increase in FAR. I don't know that that's necessarily going to solve all of the woes. But again, if the board wants to move forward, if the aesthetics of the site are willing, if you're willing to sacrifice aesthetics of the site for the potential for perhaps a modest increase in floor area, that's the board's prerogative.
My concern over this is that this all came, and where this comes from is and this all stems from Union Avenue, when the impervious surface code was changed there, and I know I sat with you, Dawn, and Marty Samowski way back, and you agreed that some of these were not, they needed to be adjusted. But we changed code in one spot, and then it's a small umbrella, but when you put that umbrella across the entire town, that's an absolute concern.
So that's not necessarily an accurate representation. The applications that the town code previously in our supplementary use guidelines for off-street parking regulations allowed the use of alternative paving techniques and the purpose of that code, if you go back to see when it was adopted, the purpose of that code was to allow for alternative drainage techniques. So as opposed to having to create a drainage structure where you're doing concrete leaching pools, leaching rings, to allow for pervious pavers. What ended up happening was applicants were essentially using that as a loophole to overdevelop properties that they could not otherwise meet the dimensional regulations. So instead of saying, I'm going to use this as an alternative to drainage, applications were coming in where the entire supply of parking was being provided by pervious pavers, which would allow a much larger structure than would otherwise be permitted. Now, there's certain zoning use districts, and again, to your point, the Union Avenue professional office projects, it did come up, and it sort of shed a light on that. Again, whether over the last 20 plus years that had been sort of implemented elsewhere, I don't know that. But yes, when developers and applicants were using a loophole in a code to over-intensify the development on properties, we closed that loophole. So we didn't do it, and it was fixed the loophole.
Just to clarify, this amendment, potential amendment, does not affect the Union area or the Aquabog, and so those are not the zones that we are looking at. So just to clarify, we are not changing anything in those very
sensitive, let's call it.
The rural zones.
Just the things that, it's.
And
So again, so DC3, is generally located in the downtown Riverhead area, which is a more dense area. Again, business PB, the Roanoke Avenue corridor. I can generate, if the board wishes to move forward, I can generate the resolutions. We can put it to a public hearing and see what the public says. I just,
Has code revision seen this?
No, so that would,
Well, I mean, code revision, some of the people are here, but we're all part of code revision at the end of the day. But Greg, you had made a really good suggestion. Excuse me. Peconic River community. You said, you had suggested give more.
Well, so the PRC zoning use district currently has a minimum, because the PRC zoning use district is located within the DEC's Wild Scenic Recreational Rivers Corridor area. That code has a design standard that requires a minimum 50% landscaped area. So yes, I don't have an objection when the code specifically calls out a 50% landscaped area. Logic would sort of dictate that if 50% is landscaped, 50% would be developed. So yeah, that doesn't give me much,
Is there anyone on this list that you have general concerns about?
I have a question, because
Can he answer that question?
Again, not the business PB corridor. Again, I could provide an analysis for the board of those existing sites to see if anyone is approaching anywhere near 90% impervious lot coverage. I mean, I've reviewed a couple of applications along that corridor that, to my knowledge, and I don't quote me on it because it's been probably 7 or 8 years since I reviewed those, but I don't think they were anywhere near 90% impervious coverage.
Okay. Well, my question is, the one we have in front of us is dated March 31st, 2025, and you asked me to stick around for a business advisory meeting, committee meeting, and you had Mr. Marty give me an example, and there's a lot more changes on that one. So is this the one that
This is the one that is signed, is that we've updated, because I think Greg was very thorough and explained some of the implications of some of the ones. And I think myself and certainly Councilman KERN, I think, agrees that we had similar concerns, and so we simplified the list to make sure that we were staying out of any.
So if the board wants to go forward, these are handwritten, obviously. If the board wants to go forward with scheduling public hearings, I would take this and I would amend it. I would, put a revision date for the public hearing. I would write these in, obviously, on a computer, and, provide you a clean copy showing cross-outs and amendments to it, so.
It's fine with me, and thanks for spending the time, Greg.
So I'll write this up clean. You want to schedule a public hearing on it?
Sure.
Yeah.
3?
Yes.
Great.
Thanks, Greg.
You're welcome.
Great. Is that the last one? Is that the last thing on the agenda?
I believe so.
I gotta ask you something. I gotta get it for a second.
So we're gonna have a motion and a second to end our work session and move into executive session where we have litigation matters surrounding the update on litigation regarding odd even year election case with Councilor Howard, matters surrounding litigation between Town of Riverhead and Suffolk County with Howard, DIPAOLA, and Allen, matters surrounding update on pending litigation matters relating to assessors, and legal counsel with TENNENBERG, Brown, Lipinski, and Howard, matters surrounding update on litigation between the Town of Riverhead and the American Breeders with Howard. And we also have an item that was added, matters surrounding change of status in Water District employees with Mancini, DiPaola, and Strickland Tio. And so may I have a motion to go into executive session to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? So moved.
Thanks, Joanne.